Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. You ever get that sense that when you're in front of a group, internal, external, presentation, speech, whatever it is, I nailed it. And you're just 1,000% on point. Well, I have great news. The awesome and amazing Cindy Skalicky from On Point Communications is here, and she helps people just like you nail it. So Cindy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here.
So we had a little client get together at which you did a brilliant presentation because you are growing and scaling your business to the point where you brought in a fractional COO.
Yes.
And for a lot of the solo consultants, coaches, trainers, speakers out there, they're like, oh, I wish I could do that. That sounds amazing. That sounds fantastic. So talk a little bit about your journey to kind of growing and scaling, and then what brought you to this inflection point where a COO became a necessity.
Well, yes. And I would say it was a scary decision, first of all, just in terms of making that, just a couple of months back, but it has become a necessity as I've grown the business. And for the listeners out there, my business began in the fall of 2015. So I'm going on 8.5 years now. And as I got going on how to scale certain product lines, and specifically this was when I was building an online course, this woman I was taking a course from about how to build an online course said, Cindy, do you have a virtual assistant? And I said, no, what is that? She said to me what you say to us, David. She said, well, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. And so you might want to start making a list of what kinds of things you do that you don't really love doing and that eat up your time, where you'd rather do other things like building programming or working with clients or selling. So in 2018 or 17, around that zone, I hired my first virtual assistant. And that began to grow to 2 assistants and then 3 assistants. And, we're only talking like 5 to 8 hours a week per person, not hiring them. They're all just part-time, but they were able to take things off my plate that I did not want to do, that I was not great at doing. And that was really helpful. And I began to feel this feeling of team that was coming from doing this. And it was extremely helpful. So how did I get to the point of the FCOO need? Well, once I got everyone under the same umbrella and we were all in a Slack channel together and I had people kind of moving in their zones, I realized that I just couldn't quite break through this particular revenue point unless I could really get someone else's brain on the business development side. And so I started interviewing some fractional COOs to understand more of what they do. And, David, it was really it was a stress thing too. Like I was pretty stressed out on a daily, weekly basis with the number of tasks in front of me and so many that weren't getting done. So I pulled the trigger, and Mike has been with us for going on 3 months now. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, very, very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about, because this is a significant investment. It's probably your biggest monthly investment on your balance sheet at this point.
Yes.
Talk about sort of your revenue journey and sort of what's fueling the ability to hire amazing people on your team to help you take it even further and faster.
Sure. Well, I would say that in 2021, I was eking toward that 6-figure amount. So in 2020, I had just crept past the 100,000 mark for cash in the door. The next year, I blew that out of the water and had a really solid year. And this year, I'm going to more than triple that. So I'm looking at around 330 right now for what I'm going to do if I can keep this train moving. And so, yeah, he's my heaviest line item. I mean, by a lot.
Yeah.
And so I am going long before I'm ready. And so it's a mindset shift for me too. Like, I can't afford this on paper. And yet I can't afford not to. There's a lot of parts to, what's happening in the business. And so I'm really holding my breath, if I'm being totally honest with you, but it's working because we've been able to get more clients in the door, more larger value clients in the door with the help of the FCOO's role.
Yeah, for sure. And talk a little bit about, because I know that looking at that monthly number could be one source of stress. And again, in the context of things, the intellectual framework around, hey, this is the key to get to 500K, 700K, $1 million plus. But talk about some of the benefits of having a collaborator, a sounding board. Obviously, you're using us to some extent as your coaches in that sense, but having someone in the business, on the team every day, 7 digits away. Hey, quick question. Hey, shall we go left? Shall we go right? Here's a new opportunity. Is it really a distraction? Talk about having a collaborator and a right-hand person now to bounce things off of.
Oh, it's so valuable. It's similar to when I came into MBA, which, I did also before I was ready. It's interesting to have the same experience mindset wise. When I came into MBA and I'm a 3-year, I'm in my 3rd year with MBA, completely transformed my business, but also my mindset of what was possible. And so I am banking on those same patterns of thought and behavior to happen with Micah, and to make sure that, having someone with me who can whiteboard stuff out with me and really discuss the trajectory of the business, it's incredibly valuable. I mean, I have a meeting with him, every week. And sometimes because he's in person or he's local, we can sit down together in a room and backtrack, hey, where did the money come in from all last year? Where did we get these deals from? And he will stand up at the whiteboard. He brings the agenda. He brings the things to do. He tells me what he sees. And I have never had that at this level before. And it's incredibly valuable. So it brings me a sense of having like a business partner in a sense, as far as
for sure,
mindset wise.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears here and let's talk about your business and what your clients come to you for, and what are some cool new sort of services and programs that you help your clients with. So as we're talking right now, what's on the menu? What is on offer from On Point Communications?
For sure. And we threaded this out with my FCOO just a few weeks ago. Ultimately, there are 2 sides of the house when it comes to what we provide at On Point Communications. We have the one-on-one side of the house, and we have the team side of the house. And so for the people who need assistance one-on-one and they want to be with us for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, we run something called our MMI, which is our Message Mentorship Intensive. And ultimately, that's like having us in your sidecar. We are with you all the way when it comes to the kinds of messaging challenges you're dealing with on a weekly basis. So we're going to get you from a place of nervousness and low confidence and messy, sloppy presentations to presentations and the I nailed it feeling, right? So we go from failed it to nailed it is sort of what I say. And that's been a really successful program for senior level leaders who most of them are in innovation labs, like, places where they need to talk with stakeholders and get buy-in and run great meetings. And so we have kind of the side of the house that's one-on-one. And then we have our group and our team players where we go on site, just like I did recently to California. I was just at Google Workspace a few days ago and worked with their full team to help them. And we run multi-day masterclasses with them. We provide follow-on work through virtual coaching to really dial up the full team with executive presence training, presentation skills training, and we really go molecular level, which is not what most presentation skills outfits do as we do.
Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. So it's like a live ammo experience. We're not just teaching, hey, here's how to present, here's how to do whatever it is. It's their presentation, their audience, their stakeholders, their situation, their slide deck for that high impact or critical situation presentation, whether that's internal, external, stakeholders, clients, customers, prospects, media, investors, whatever it is. And you're walking them through the actual substance of what they're presenting, how they're presenting, things like rhetoric. And I want to talk about rhetoric because I know that's one of your superpowers and specialties. But it's like the how, the where, the why, the when, and the when you say level of nuance, it is literally sometimes sentence by sentence or word by word, and words make a huge difference, right? So picking this word versus that word is going to totally change the way the audience receives that message.
Absolutely. And similar to the way that you work with us to give us exactly the right words that we need to say when we're in sales conversations, we go to the same level of granularity. And I tell you what you need to say to close the deal, to end the call, to start the meeting, to tell the storyline. We do a lot of storytelling. And some of our most popular downloaded PDFs are our sentence starters. I have had people print out, we have, slides of sentence starters that they just keep next to their desk to help them say those sentence starters as they share their opinion in a meeting, for example, so that they can feel that higher level of credibility in the inner circle. So we go deep, very molecular level, as you said.
Yeah. So do tell us about rhetoric. What is rhetoric? How did you develop this kind of subspecialty and superpower? It's really a tool set, but talk about what it is and how it works in your business.
So I have a master's in something called rhetorical criticism, and rhetoric is the art and science of persuasion in its simplest definition. And rhetoric is something that I landed upon when I was actually in my undergrad. And the assignment that was given by my professor that day that kind of lit the light bulb as to what I'm good at doing was as follows. And this is what I do with my clients' slide decks. This professor gave us a speech written by Hillary Rodham Clinton, and he wrote the whole speech out, printed it out, and numbered all the lines of the speech. And he asked us to write a project. And he said, I want you to evaluate this speech given by Hillary Rodham Clinton, and I want you to tell me in your paper, was this an effective rhetorical act or not? In other words, did she succeed in giving this address or did she not? And you need to tell me why, and you need to use Aristotle's rhetorical theory as your defense.
Which I use all the time. I mean, Cindy, every day I'm just pulling out my Aristotle. It is
you
so
do.
Cool.
That's just the thing, though, David. You do. We all do. So Aristotle is the father of persuasion. And the simplest way we can think of him is with an equilateral triangle, where we have speaker at the top, we have audience on the lower left, and we have message on the lower right. And you might know, you listeners out there who are savvy, persuasive experts, ethos, pathos, logos is Aristotle. So we have to create messaging that hits all of those and balances those: credibility, audience, and message. So head and heart have got to be balanced in our messages. We need to have storyline. We need to have logic and reason to convince people. And so I have found a way to commercialize this, actually, is what I've sort of realized over the years. Like I took it out of the hallways of academia, which is where I was learning it, and I brought it into the business world. And you wouldn't believe it. People love it. I thought, oh man, I don't know how this is going to land. So if you have a cool idea, if you have a really neat idea that you don't think people are going to grab a hold of, I say go for it. Test it, get it out there, and see what people will do with it. Because the sciencey, techie people that I work with, they live for theory. They love knowing why they should do something. And that's what rhetoric has allowed me to bring to them, because that's just how my brain works. I'm like a message detective, and I just want to get into your message and figure out where it's broken and then bring you to a place where you're nailing it. So that's just how I work, I guess.
Yeah, that is so great. So I think the encouragement, and feel free to talk a little bit more about this. Some people would say, okay, I'm really geeky in this area, but I don't want to let that show. I don't want to let that come out in my prospecting or my connection building or in my sales conversations, because prospects won't get it. They won't like it. They won't resonate with it. It's too complicated. It's too technical. But you are kind of letting your rhetoric freak flag fly.
Yes.
You're like, I love this stuff. And let me tell you how it works and why it works.
Yes.
And so what you're really doing is you are democratizing and popularizing this fairly esoteric, ancient art that many people are not aware of. But once they understand the outcome of it and the result of it and the power behind it, and like you said, the scientific, technical people, they love the underpinnings. They love the theory. They love unpacking why something works the way it works. So it's partly you're using logos, ethos, and pathos the same sort of way. I know they're going to resonate with it. I know that they're going to be fascinated by it. I know that they're going to want to kind of take it apart like a machine and figure out how it works and why it works. It's not a natural skill for them, because think about it, right? Scientists and technical people communicating, generally not known as the world's best communicators. But if you can give them, if you can help them geek out about what you do the same way that they geek out about their own work, I think that's a magic combination.
It's a framework, which is a great F word, right? That we all want to create. The framework of rhetoric. They love the fact that it started somewhere and that they can use this shape. And others who describe how to persuade or tell stories, they don't seem to do it as clearly, I guess, in terms of how that can happen. So yeah, if you create gears for them to unpack or puzzles for them to undo because they are engineer minded, that's kind of what that theory brings for them to, have the ability to play with it.
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit, speaking about geeking out. I know that when people go to your website, and we'll also drop a link in the show notes here, but one of the prominent menu choices is the 5 pillars to message mastery.
Right.
Can you kind of just walk us through how you came to that framework, and then what are the 5 pillars to message mastery?
Yeah, wow. That's a great question. I think that when I was first getting started in my business and I was asking the question, what are the things that someone needs to learn, obtain, and really capitalize on to achieve message mastery? What are those things? What are those pillars? And using rhetoric and using the trainings that I was beginning to create, I landed on these 5 pillars. And so when you look at that, I would encourage people to go to that and look at it, because pillars 1, 2, and 3 are all about the message. Pillars 4 and 5 are all about you, the messenger. And so in pillars 1, 2, and 3, we're unpacking rhetoric and persuasion in module number 1. In module 2, you're getting another amazing framework called the How To Model, which is becoming a book next year. Super exciting.
Woohoo! Nice.
It's all about how to make your presentation into a storyline that grabs your audience's attention and makes them feel like they're on a journey that's exciting and relaxing and not full of stress because they don't get it. So that framework is huge for founders, for executives. Module number 3 is all around savvy slide decks. And I'm telling you, I have seen so much garbage around slide decks and how people create these, and people need help. So that's module 3. Module 4 is on rehearsal techniques, and that's actually the freebie that's at my homepage at the website. There's a free 45-minute webinar that just says, like, click here for free training. It's called the Rehearsal Trifecta, and that is for nervous speakers, for speakers who need to polish their message and really commit it to memory so you can be present with your audience. And then I added module 5 kind of after the fact. It used to be 4 pillars. Now it's 5. The 5th pillar is on mastering your Q&A sessions, because that's the impromptu portion of your presentation that you still need to do well. And you have ways to prepare for that so that it's not so scary and stress inducing. And we talk about that in module 5.
I want to just shout out the savvy slide decks, because so many times, not just executives, but professional presenters, people like you, people like me, we might get up in front of a group and you just mention it in passing. It's not even a big deal. Hey, team, I'm not using PowerPoint today. And spontaneous applause bursts out because they're like, oh my God, there is so much horrible, horrible PowerPoint. And so many terrible slide decks that speakers subject their audiences to. When you say slide decks that flows, easy to read, and is fun to experience, I'm sure a lot of your clients say, okay, mic drop, stop right there. You had me at slide decks. Because again, scientists, technical people, people in the software, hardware, technical science, it's like, those aren't even slide decks. Those are like just massive walls of text and charts and graphs and data.
Yeah, you're right.
And hashtag boring. Talk a little bit about how do you get technical scientific people to let go of the walls of text and the charts and the graphs and the cryptic nonsense?
Oh my gosh. It's a journey to do that, to have them let go of it. But ultimately, I try to convey that our slide decks are a partner for us. They're supposed to be an aid. So I remember teaching public speaking, chapter 15 was on visual aids. And the definition was, this is actually your helper. So why are we creating slide decks that hurt? So we should not create slide decks that are hurting us and our credibility, because we need to remember that you can easily create cognitive dissonance when you put a wall of text up and the audience is reading that or trying to figure it out, and they're not listening to you at all. So, a freebie tip for the audience today, I say 25 words or less on a slide, my friends, 25 words or less. That doesn't count the title, but you want to try to keep it to words and phrases that are needed for your audience, not make it your script. Is not for you. It is for your audience. So that's a little touch point there.
It's for the audience. It's not your cue cards.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about sales communication, because I think this is an area that you obviously teach and help people with things like pitches and big critical presentations where money is at stake and so forth. But there's also a brilliant sales communication document on your homepage, which is the pre-call discussion document. Talk about what that is and how you use it.
Oh, I love my pre-call sales discussion document. The sales discussion document is something that I created to help people understand me and on point before we get into a discovery call. Okay. And I learned this from you, and it's been very helpful to people who are new to my orbit. And I want them to understand how our discovery call is going to go. So it's a little bit of an on-ramp. It's a little bit of let's grease the skids on how this discussion call is going to go. And so what I do, it's a few pages, it's nothing overdone, but it puts the audience who's reading it, who's going to come onto a discovery call with me, it's written just directly for them. What are some of the challenges you're having before you come onto our discovery call? And I usually will email it to them and say, have a look at page 2. We're going to go through those questions in our discovery call. If you have time, take a peek at those and jot some notes down. And it provides purpose and direction for the 30-minute sales call. So they know Like, I'm serious. We're not just here to monkey around and talk about the weather. We're going to actually do some thinking and diagnosing on this call as I listen to what your problems are, your struggles are, and where you want to go in your presentation skills. So it's been a really helpful tool.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. If I may say, I think you're being perhaps a little modest about what's in that document, and people should totally go and check it out. There are so many smart things in that document. So first, there's kind of a summary of what On Point is. The very first thing up at the top is like recent success story, $3.4 million of funding from one of the pitches that you helped coach the company. And so that's kind of subtle / not subtle. Hey, this stuff works, right? Yep. So recent success story. Then you have the summary. Then you have the questions. You get right into the questions there, like you said, on page 2. And the questions are also very thought-provoking. They're not obvious questions. They're sort of, how much, how many, to what degree. So there's some nuance in the thinking that they should do, that the prospect should do. And there's some nuance in how you might tease out some additional things about them while you're talking to them. Then there's kind of a breakdown of success stories. I believe there's links to videos as well.
I believe there is, yes.
In there.
Yep.
So by the time, am I correct that by the time they get to that initial conversation, they've already experienced some wow factor?
I'm hoping so. Yes, that's the aim. It's just to showcase success we've already had and to help them identify with some of the people on that page that they want to be those people in their own ways. That's another rhetorical tool of identification. How can we get a person who's reading what we've given them or watching what we are showing them to help them identify with the person we're talking about or the story that they are hearing? And so when people can identify with what they're seeing or hearing, it's strong in terms of its persuasive quality.
Let me ask you a challenge that I'm sure you deal with. This could literally be a little bit of a communication challenge, but I think it's more of a self-image and self-confidence challenge. Technical and scientific people from other nationalities. So they work here, right, at US companies, but they're from China, they're from India, they're from Eastern Europe. They've always had some sort of accent. They've always had some sort of critical commentary or some, backstory that they're not as powerful communicators because they have this accent. And so they're sort of extra reluctant, right? The typical technical scientific professional who is perhaps American born, they're already screwed up about you're a terrible communicator. Now we add the stigma of, you're from China, you're from India, you're from Eastern Europe, and you sound like you're from China, you're from India, you're from Eastern Europe. How do you build up that person's self-confidence or people that have, predominantly those kinds of professionals on their team?
Yes. And I do have this frequently come up. And so I have at least 2 thoughts on what has worked well for these individuals. Number one, I offer them a higher number of words per slide. And I say, you know what? I usually say 25 words on a slide, but for non-native English speakers, it's 35. And here's why. I was listening once to a gentleman pitch, and he was from India originally, and I was having a terribly hard time following his deck and some of the messaging. And I thought, if I had some of the words that are coming out of his mouth that I'm not fully understanding, if I had some of those words on the slide, it would really help my brain take that in more. So I ended up doing a podcast about that, my own little one, some tips on what they could do. But the other is helping them bring their stories bringing their stories from India, from China, from Russia. I had a 65-year-old Russian scientist that I was working with, and just bringing their own storylines and heritage into some of their communication where possible so that they can use their heritage as a strength and see the value in that. And it helps them feel more empowered. The final thought I have is just to help them look at other individuals who are of their same heritage, who are good speakers, who have learned to cross over that bridge and open their mouths more, for example, to get the sound out. That has been helpful to show them where people who speak their language have really succeeded in getting to that next level. But I try to be just very sensitive to them and really, that's about relationship building. You can help them even more when there's trust and they know that you really want them to be perceived better. And so we're going to work on this and talk about it.
Yeah, really important. And I think it's on one level, you're right. It is the technical aspect of vocal presentation, 35 words on the slide instead of 25. But so much of it comes from confidence.
Yes.
Right. And so when they tap into their heritage, that increases their confidence because now they're talking about their own story. They're talking about their own backstory and maybe some examples and metaphors that come out of that. And they're just, they look at it then as a strength instead of a liability.
Because we can't change their accent fully, and we don't want to. So how do we use it as a strength and play with that so that it feels like not a hindrance, but a positive thing?
Yes. Love that so much. Well, as we're landing the plane, I've got two final questions for you. The final question is going to be, where can people tap into more Cindy Skalicky brilliance? But before we get to that, if folks were to take one overarching idea from our conversation today about effective communication, we covered a lot of territory, obviously. Effective communication, Aristotle, confidence, that I nailed it, feeling. What would that one final big picture piece of advice be?
That's easy. It lives inside of Aristotle's triangle, and it's all about the A for audience. And what I would say is you have got to remember that it's not about you. What you're presenting, what you're sharing is not about you. And the number one best thing that you can do to nail a presentation is to try as hard as you can to be your audience in terms of what they are needing and wanting from you when you are about to communicate with them. Meet them where they are and meet their expectations. What is it that they need from you in order to act? I often say to clients, I don't care what you want to tell your audience. I don't care. What is it that they need to hear from you in order to act? And that's where we have to start. So get out of your own shoes and get into theirs. And you are more than 50% of the way toward a message that nails it.
Totally fantastic. And could not agree more. Well, Cindy Skalicky, where can people go to get more Cindy Skalicky brilliance? So we're going to put all of these in the show notes. Right below this episode, but how can and should people connect with you?
Yes, people should go to my website for that free training that I mentioned, which is www, and then it's onpoint-communications.com. So onpoint, one word, communications.com. And I'm also extremely active at LinkedIn, which is where I provide a lot of daily tips and videos, and connecting with me there would be a great place. And I would love for you to say in your invitation request, I heard you on David Newman's podcast. Then I know where you found me. And you can email me as well at cindy@onpoint-communications.com.
Excellent. And all of those links and resources will be directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Cindy Skalicky, you are a rock star. I appreciate you. I cannot wait to see what you make happen next. And the entrepreneurial journey just keeps getting higher and higher and better and more fun to come.
Well, thank you, David. So much of it has been due to what I have learned through your amazing program, and your level of detail and coaching and guidance and heart is what has made a huge difference in my life. So thank you.
Thank you, my friend. That's beautifully put. I really appreciate you. And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.